Well, on Daily Business tonight we will talk about Turkey and its policy and whether Turkey becomes the superpower in the region or quite reverse. Artur Wróblewski of Lazarski University is our guest, so welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me
When
to the
you
show.
are looking at the multilateral policy of Turkey, it's a rapprochement with Russia, and what is happening right now in northern Syria. What do you make out of this?
We are far away now from rapprochement with Russia or détente in the region because Turkey, Erdogan, is very weak, and the whole mess is coming from his weakness. Why? First of all, he's weak because he's losing support, not only in general population in Turkey, but also among his own members. President Erdogan is losing its grip on power. Hundreds of people left his party, Development and Justice Party, and two people even close to him established new parties or joined new parties. So he's feeling like he's losing maybe this popularity, so he tries to increase his popularity by opening new fronts of combat, by fighting this war in Syria, but nobody really understands why he's in Syria and
Does
what
he want to
he's
annex
fighting
northern
for.
Syria? He attacks the government of Syria's forces.
To some extent, he would like to incorporate this northern part of Syria because it represents the Kurdish identity and Kurdish population. So he wants to control so-called Rojava or Kurdistan, Syrian Kurdistan, in order to control people who have been fighting against Turkey for many decades. But actually Kurdish people in Turkey were fighting against him. But of course this border is porous, so he assumes that maybe people in Rojava are hiding Kurdish rebels in Syria, and then they cross the border. But this is a big problem anyway for him. But he's fighting this war because he's weak. He wants to increase his popularity. Why he lost so much popularity in Turkey? Because he got involved in those conflicts in the Middle East, but economy is very weak. And actually the economy was affected very much by the war in the region and by the conflict with Russia and the Syrian government. And what is the worst thing for him, Turkey, Erdogan is losing this battle near Idlib. And he supported even the former Al-Qaeda or Jabhat al-Nusra forces, which are now called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, in order to fight against President of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. But unfortunately for Erdogan, Russians, who are great manipulators and great diplomats, are supporting Damascus and the government of Bashar al-Assad because Russia doesn't want Turkey to become stronger or an important player in this region. Why? Because Russia wants to be the most important regional superpower in that area. They don't want Turkey. That's why they are helping Bashar al-Assad to kill Turkish forces, and only last week, in only one day on Thursday, 36 Turkish troops, Turkish soldiers were killed. In February, generally, over 50 Turkish soldiers were killed. That's why 140 Turkish intellectuals and artists signed a petition addressing Erdogan to withdraw from Syria. It's not our war. We don't want our boys dying in the war, which is exotic, and we don't understand Turkish intellectual and artists why we are fighting in Syria. Do we want to incorporate Syria? Why are we there?
On the other hand, the NATO, the Syria's army, the Turkish army, is the second in numbers in NATO. It was long considered a pillar of this defensive alliance in the southeast of Europe. Yet we are witnessing as Turkey was kicked out of the F-35 program, as it wants to share the sensitive information with Russia, the purchase of S-400 Russian rockets that are supposed to be included to the Turkish air defense system, which cannot be done without of sharing some very sensitive information, really jeopardizes the safety of, for example, Poland.
Let's remember that Turkey was a very important part of this project called Joint Fight Striker.
And you are using the past term in a purpose.
Yes, F-35, because they were producing, if I remember correctly, around 437 parts and particles needed for the construction of this fifth generation superplane, American superplane. It was a joint project. So they were kicked out of this. They were trying to buy now a Patriot missile system, but United States refused to sell it. They were asking now for this system in order to respond to Russians and to Syrian forces, which are fighting very hard against Turkish soldiers and installations and outposts in Idlib province and in the area in general. So it looks like Erdogan is now compromised a little bit and isolated because he does not have any friends. Russians and President Putin is not anymore his friend and ally. Syrian president is not his friend. NATO is not anymore supporting this kind of game Erdogan is playing. And Erdogan is losing its own power base in Turkey due to very weak and very bad economy. So he's becoming increasingly isolated old man, and I would say that we see the end of President Erdogan. The next parliamentary election in Turkey will take place in 3.5 years. I believe that maybe he will not survive so long.
We will see. Turkey, very important country for the safety and for the economy of Europe also is...
And for NATO, because it's a big army, but let's remember that NATO is a community of democratic countries, and Turkey is not meeting anymore those democracy standards we consider as our standard in NATO.
Artur Wróblewski of Lazarski University. Sir, thank you very much for this insight. And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.